Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom, dai, 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 ya, da, dai, 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 ya, da, dai, 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 ya, dai, 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 ya, dai, 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 We're going to just sing this a few times because later we're going to put some Hebrew words to it, but now we're just going to sing it regularly on la la la. Ya la 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 la, and just enjoy it. Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, Rabbi. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. So,
to our mini band.
In a moment, we're going to begin formally with our service. And as we do, just a few announcements. The first is that on your way in, you got to make sure to grab one of these books. Nancy Sarayski, a member of our board, is going to be our usher tonight. If you have any questions or need anything, you can always turn to her. On your way in, you'll find large print prayer books if you need them. There's also hearing-assisted devices in the office right on your right. In addition to that, if you need the bathrooms, they're outside to the right. Though all gender and handicap accessible bathrooms are through the office into the back. Finally, if you need any kind of emergency exit tonight, of course, they're the exit that you came in, but notice there's an exit here and an exit through those doors in the back and outside. If you happen to be sitting near someone who looks like they're lost, who doesn't know where they are in the prayer book or on the page, don't be shy about turning to them and showing them where we are. That way everyone can belong and everyone can feel a part of services. So with that, we're going to begin with our opening song, at least with words, page 24, Shalom Aleichem.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachi Hasharet, Malachi Elyon, Ami Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. בואכם לשלום, בואכם לשלום, מלאכי השלום, מלאכי עליון, ממלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, ברכוני, ברכוני, בשלום, מלאכי השלום, מלאכי לשלום, זה איתכם לשלום, מלאכי השלום, מלאכי עליון, מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, שלום עליכם, שלום עליכם, מלאכי השרת, מלאכי עליון, מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש, הקדוש ברוך ברוך.
So we can take a nice deep breath in, deep breath out. This week, I feel like I've been running around almost like a chicken with my head cut off. I moved from the grounding of Passover to kind of the everyday, the challenge of just moving through life. And Shabbat is meant to be a grounding force, just like Passover was over that past week. It's meant to allow yourself to just pause, to be present with your own thoughts, your own feelings, to be present in community, to be present with prayer, to be present with God. And so as we move into this Shabbat, I want you to think, in order to not be that kind of aimless chicken running around, What is a grounding point for you? What's something that you can hold on to? What's something that you can peg yourself to? What's something that will give you a sense that your feet have found firm ground? And hold on to that for these next 25 hours. And so we're going to move into formally ushering Shabbat as we light our candle. And tomorrow, Blake is going to become bat mitzvah. And in honor of that, I want to call her up with her parents and her brother. We're on page 2 and 3.
As the Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we, by our lives, give light to all who behold us. As their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we in our own day be among those who kindle light.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu להדליק נר של שבת.
O source of light and truth, creator of the eternal law of goodness, help us to find knowledge by which to live. Lead us to take the words we shall speak into our hearts and our lives. Bless all who enter the sanctuary in need, all who bring the offerings of their hearts. May our worship lead us to acts of kindness, peace, and love.
We join together now in the Kiddush, page number 5.
Blake, you hold the cup.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei pri hagafen.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu בשבת קודשו באהבה וברצון הנחילנו זיכרון למעשה וראשית כי הוא יום תחילה למקראי קודש זכר ליציאת מצרים כיוונו בחרת ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים ושבת קודשך באהבה וברצון הנחלתנו ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת.
Amen.
L'chaim, give it a little sip. Or a big sip.
All right.
Mazal
So you can
tov,
head,
an early
your seat.
mazal tov.
And we're going to move into now counting our Omer, a special ritual that you do from the days between Passover to Shavuot, spelling a kind of spiritual journey that you make from one holiday to the next.
So Matt's going to put a slide up for us. There it is. And you'll notice the past couple of weeks I've spoken about that piece of art that's on the left. And it seems like each week I find out another intricate piece about it. So I had a conversation with my friend Toby Khan the other day as he took the piece out and put it up on the top. And when I looked at the inside of it, it's gold. Silver on the outside, but gold on the inside. And I know that each block only fits in a specific shape. So it can't go back into number 6 if it fits in number 8. Okay, follow me with that. So each week I've talked about this idea of building blocks of our soul characteristics, and each of these represent a combination of different traits put together. And what we're going to do is offer the opportunity for us to do a blessing. So we'll move to the second slide. There we go. L'Shem Yichud, Kuchabrichu Ushkintei, Hineni Muchanu Mezuman, Lekayem Mitzvat Haseh, Shel Sfirat HaOmer, Shel Sfirat HaOmer, Shel Sfirat HaOmer, Shel Sfirat HaOmer, Sheva Shabbatot, Timimotiyena, Sheva Shabbatot, Tiyenena. So we are welcoming this time where we can each say the brachot, which we'll flip to the next slide. Same tune, join me. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu, b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu, al sfirat haomer, al sfirat haomer, al sfirat haomer, al sfirat haomer. We move ahead to actually count the days. Hayom shisha asar yom, shehem shnei shavuot ushnei yamim laomer. Today is 16 days, which are 2 weeks and 2 days of the Omer. So as I mentioned at the beginning, we talk about very specifically those soul traits, and the soul traits that intersect for tonight are strength of character within beauty, compassion, balance, and harmony, Givurah, Sheb Tiferet. Sorry. So I'm going to ask you to close your eyes like we did last week. I need you to do some thinking while your eyes are closed. Take a nice deep breath, as Rabbi had said at the beginning of the service. For compassion to be effective and healthy, it needs to be disciplined and focused. It requires discretion both to whom you express compassion and in the measure of the compassion itself. It's recognizing when compassion should be expressed and when it should be withheld or limited. Discipline in compassion is knowing that being truly compassionate sometimes requires withholding compassion. Because compassion is not an expression of the bestower's needs, but a response to the recipient's needs. So we have a challenge. If you open your eyes, you can see our challenge. Think about how you can direct your compassion and express your compassion in a focused and constructive manner by addressing someone's specific needs. Think perhaps about volunteering at a hospital, a homeless shelter, a nursing home, a local food bank, or perhaps an animal rescue center. Think about doing something for others with compassion. And most importantly, don't just count the days, really make those days count. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
We're going to move now. We're on page 20 as we join together in the words of L'chadodi.
לחדודי לקראת קלה, יללה, 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 בני שבת. לקרבלה, די, 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 לחדודי לקראת קלה, יללה, 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 בני שבת. לקרבלה, שמור וזכור בדיבורך, השמיענו אל המיוחד. אדוני אחד ושמו
hear you.
לך דודי, לקראת קלה, יררה, יללה, יללה, בני שבת, נקבלה, יאי, 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 לך דודי, לקראת קלה, יררה, יללה, יללה, בני שבת, נקבלה, לקראת שבת, לכו ונלכה, כי מקור הברכה, מראש מקדם נסוכה, סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה.
Let's hear you.
לך דודי, לך דודי, לקראת קלה, ירר, יללה, יללה, בני שבת, נקבלה, יאי, 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 לך דודי, לקראת קלה, יללה, יללה, יאי, בני שבת, נקבלה, נקבלה.
Verse 5,
התעוררי, התעוררי, כי בעורך אני אורי, אורי, שירדה ברי כבוד אדוני, עלייך נגלה, לך דודי, לקראת קלה, יררה, יללה, יללה, בני שבת, נקבלה, יאי, יאי, לך דודי, לקראת קלה, יררה, יללה, יללה, בני שבת, בני שבת, נקבלה. If you're able, we invite you to
Verse
rise up
number
on your
9.
feet. בואי ושלום, עטרת בעלה, גם בשמחה ובצולה, תוך אמוני עם סגולה, בואי חלה, בואי חלה, לך דודי, לקראת קלה, יררה, יללה, יללה, בני שבת, נקבלה, יאי, 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 לך דודי, לקראת קלה, יררה, יללה, יללה, בני שבת, נקבלה. I know we have a whole bunch of younger kids. Dodi, if you want to come a little bit forward and dance with us, you may. Bnei Shabbat, nekabela. One more time. Lecha Dodi, likrat la 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 la. Bnei Shabbat, nekabela.
We remain standing, page 28, Baruch Hu.
That's not going to be what we want, is it? We could do that. Okay. Now you've heard it. If you don't know, join us. Together. Baruchu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch
Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch אדוני המבורך לעולם לעולם ועד.
We're seated together as we turn our attention to the screen for a creative rendition of this next prayer, Mariv Aravim.
Just one of my favorites. I just love to imagine this rolling into the dark and then into the light. Not better, not worse, just this beautiful kind of perfect symmetry. So we breathe it in. Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day, day turns to night. Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day, day turns to, keep it going.
Roll into dark, into light. Night becomes day, day turns to night. Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day, day turns to night. Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day, day turns to night. Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day.
Rolling Baruch Adonai Hamariv Aravim.
Ahavat Olam, page 32.
אהבת עולם לישראל, עמך אהבת, עמך אהבת. תורה ומצוות, חוקים ומשפטים, אותנו לימדת, אותנו לימדת. על כן אדוני אלוהינו בשוכבנו ובקומנו, נשיח בחוקיך ונשמח בדברי תורתך ובמצוותיך לעולם ועד. כי הם חיינו ואורך ימינו, ובהם נגן בלילה, נגן יומם בלילה. ואהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים. ברוך אתה אדוני אוהב עמו ישראל, אוהב עמו ישראל. שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד. Together.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Page 36.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך, ובלכתך בדרך, ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתב דם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני
Adonai Elohechem.
אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
We move forward in our prayer book. We're on page 40 as we join together in that song of freedom. Mi chamocha.
Ya ida ila ila ya la la, ya ida ida ila ila la la la, ya la ila la, ya la la, ya ila la, ya la la, ya ila. Mi chamocha bailim Adonai, mi chamocha bailim Adonai, mi chamocha ne'edbar b'kodesh, nora tekiloto zevele. Norate giro zevele malechut ra'u banecha ukei hayam lifnei Moshe u'Miriam ze Eli anu ve'amru ze Eli anu ve'amru Adonai imlo me'olam va'ed Adonai one more time on ya ya da da ya ya la la ya da da ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la la ya la ya la ya la ya la ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל.
On the bottom of page 43. Give us a place to rest, Adonai our God. Bring us into shelter in the soft, long evening shadows of your truth. For with you are true protection and safety, and in your presence are acceptance and gentle love. Watch over us as we go forth, prepare for us as we return. Spread over us your shelter of peace over all we love, over our Jerusalem and yours. Baruch atah Adonai, haporeh sukat shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael ve'al Yerushalayim. Bottom of page 44.
ישמחו במלכותך שומרי 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 שבת וקורא עונג שבת ישמחו במלכותך שומרי 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 שבת וקורא עונג שבת מקדשי שבי שבת כולם ישחיו ויתענגו מטובך שבת ישמחו במלכותך שומרי 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 שבת וקורא עונג שבת ישמחו במלכותך שומרי 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 שבת וקורא עונג שבת והשביל רצית בו וקידשת שבת חמדת ימים אותו קראת שבת ישמחו במלכותך שומרי 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 שבת וקורא עונג שבת ישמחו במלכותך שומרי 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 שבת וקורא עונג שבת יזכר למעשה וראה Shabbat. Zeicher למעשה בראשית. Shabbat ישמחו במלאכותיך. שומרי Shabbat קורא. עונג Shabbat ישמחו במלאכותיך. שומרי Shabbat קורא. וקורא עונג Shabbat.
We move forward in our prayer book now. We're on page 46 as we rise together for the Amidah, praying in silence after this opening meditation.
Adonai שפתי תפתח ופי יגיד תהילתך.
Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi yagid tehilatecha.
Keep letting them flow. The prayers, the hopes, the whatever flowing through your heart, whatever might have been flowing through your heart, or maybe was congested. But we're going to land together on these words that are, for me, they feel like a real mantra that I can never get enough of, but also I can never hear enough, which is that the world that we are tasked to build has to be sourced from a place of love. And you just can't say that enough times. Olam Chesed Yibaneh, you can follow along on the screen or just take it in. Olam Chesed Yibaneh, Yadalai, Yadalai, Olam Chesed Yibaneh, Yadalai, Yadalai, Olam Chesed Yibaneh, Yadalai, Olam Chesed Yibaneh, Yadalai, So we make I must build this world from love. And you must build this world from love. And if we build this world, if we build this world from love, then God will build this world from love with us.
It's not enough for us to pray just for ourselves, but there's a much bigger picture. So we offer a Mishaberach, the opportunity to pray for all of those in need of health, of body, mind, and soul. I'll ask you to join me on page 253. And when I look around the room, you can say the names of the people you'd like to say this Mishaberach for, as well as the people online can put the names in the chat. Mishaberach avotenu vimotenu, Avraham, Yitzchak, v'Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, v'Leah, hu yivarech et hacholim. May the one who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, bless and heal those who are ill. May the Blessed Holy One be filled with compassion for their health to be restored and their strength to be revived. May God swiftly send them a complete renewal of body and spirit. And let us say, Amen. Mishaberach avotenu mekor habracha. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mishaberach imotenu mekor habracha le'avotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
So every year I have occasion, because of what the Torah portion is, to actually speak a little bit about sickness. Because this week is Parshat Tazria Mitzorah, which talks about the kind of emblematic disease that exists in the Bible. It's called sara'at in Hebrew, often mistranslated as leprosy, but it's something unique. It's different than Hansen's disease, which is actually what true leprosy is. It's this strange, scaly affliction where you get these white blotches on your body, you turn impure, you're ostracized from the community, and the way to cure you is to send you out of the camp for a week and then bring you back and do a bunch of strange rituals that involve taking birds, dipping them in blood and letting them sprinkle that blood on your ear and your thumb and your right. Yes. So I bring this up in part because we as a community, as a society, often don't necessarily think about the way that we always talk about illness. But illness is incredibly important. And the way that we talk about illness often frames that illness itself. Now, the philosopher who talked about this the most in the 20th century was a writer whose name was Susan Sontag. And she wrote a book called Illness as a Metaphor. I'm curious who's read that maybe in college or something like that. Okay, a few of you. And one of the things that she says, she begins actually by saying that we've got these two lands, the land of the sick and the land of the well, and that often we find ourselves moving, sometimes as a forced migration from one to the other. And in her book, Illness as a Metaphor, she talks about really kind of thoughtfully the way that we use metaphor and sometimes even cliche to frame the way that we think about things. And in her book, she talks about two different illnesses, one being tuberculosis and one being cancer. And then eventually in the 80s, she writes an update to her book where she talks about AIDS. But what she does is she looks at the way that people talk about those illnesses and realize that actually the way that society looks at each of those sicknesses is framed literally by the words, by the metaphors that we use. Now, tuberculosis isn't something that's in our world so much now, so let's jump to the second half of her book, which is cancer. And think about the way that we talk about cancer in our world today. Right? Think about the words that we use. We talk about somebody battling cancer, fighting against cancer. We tell someone that when they're fighting cancer, they are brave. We talk about cancer and what it does to the body as consuming the body, as ravishing the body. And what does that actually mean? What does that do? If you think about it, what that does is it turns cancer, first of all, into an enemy with agency, right? You don't fight a battle against anything but an enemy. And enemies think. Enemies have strategy. Enemies are cogent. And then what do enemies do? Enemies consume. Enemies ravage. And so the way that we talk about that illness actually personifies it. And if you think about it, it's not the way we talk about every single sickness and every single illness that we deal with. But because we tend to use those words, we actually relate to cancer in a different way because of the metaphors that are used as we talk about it. And so she actually talks about the way the tuberculosis, those words that were used, used to be a kind of illness or sickness that was one of almost prestige. You would go into these sanatoriums and you would almost vacation as you were curing yourself. And the words that they would use for tuberculosis would make it seem like a really kind of hip or sexy way to be sick, which is very different, by the way, than it eventually became, and very different than the way that we talk about cancer. And so words matter. Metaphors matter. And so I think it's worthwhile, if we want to understand the way Jews traditionally look at sickness and illness and what good can come from that, but honestly, what baggage can come from that too, it's worthwhile to look at the exact same way that we looked at cancer and at tuberculosis, at Sara'at. Because if it is the ore disease, if it is the fundamental sickness that all of us can get, at least in the Bible, then understanding it will help us understand the Jewish view and understand what we take away and maybe what we want to leave behind. So when the Bible talks about Sara'at, first of all, it uses words of death. It talks about, for example, that she looked as if she had died. That's a kind of explanation of one person in the Bible who gets it. It also talked about the actual affliction as scales upon a person. Now, what do both of those things do? To look as if you were already dead and to look as if you had scales on you, it takes away your humanity. It, by the way, isn't cancer, which is something you're battling. It's a battle that's already fought and that you have already lost. You are animal-like, no longer human. That would be the scales. And you can no longer fight because you have lost that battle. It is done. And so if you think about it, the kind of view that the Bible is putting forth of illness is actually one that may not be very healthy at all. And so even when you look at case studies of people who come down with Sara'at, you find the same thing. So there's a king, there's 7 circumstances where people in the Bible get Sara'at. And one of those circumstances is a king whose name is Uzziah. And Uzziah famously walked into the temple and started sacrificing when he wasn't supposed to. And out of his arrogance, God gives him Sara'at on the forehead. He gives him these scaly white things on the forehead. And now what happens? Suddenly he gets rushed away to a tower that's locked in the corner of the kingdom. And he has to stay there until the end of his life. And when he's buried, he's not allowed to be buried with the other kings. He actually has to be buried far out in a cemetery that's nowhere near anyone else. The moment that he got it, his life was over. The moment that he got it, he was no longer human anymore. He was something to be feared. He was something to be scared of. Now, we know, by the way, that many of the metaphors of illness that we have in our day is almost a revisit of that. If you've seen, by the way, what I think is one of the best HBO shows in a while called Last of Us, it's one of those post-apocalyptic zombie shows. The moment that somebody actually gets this kind of fungus in that show, their life is over. And there is no way to ever come back from it. And if you look at the kind of post-apocalyptic way that our society tends to talk about these sicknesses that lead to the end of the world, it's as if we've returned back to the Bible, where the metaphor is foregone. But the thing is that if anybody knows anything about illness in general, you do know that you can come back from many of these illnesses. That in fact, the optimal metaphor of cancer, the idea of being a fighter, is becoming more and more true. Ayelet, who treats leukemia, has talked to me about the fact that, every year a new wonder drug seems to be coming out in that vein. And if you look at any sickness, there is new wonder drugs coming out all the time. And even if there's not something to cure you, the next wonder drug is at least going to get you the next runway so that you might actually get there. And so the goal is to understand that when somebody does become ill, we can't treat them like Sara'at. We can't treat them as if they were already foregone. We have to understand that that person in the midst of illness is still a human being. They still have agency. They are still, for lack of a better metaphor, fighting that disease. And so we have to treat people in that way too. Too many of us notice that someone gets sick and just stop calling. Notice that someone's struggling and stop showing up. Notice that someone's struggling and don't actually treat them as the human being. We treat them just as the illness itself. But our goal is to move past any of those metaphors, because metaphors dehumanize the human experience that we are all getting as we are struggling with the sickness in front of us. Our goal is to be present with the person who is dealing with the illness, not with what the illness stands for. And so I want to challenge all of us as we navigate the sickness in our life. And hopefully you'll be there first as a comforter of someone else who is sick, rather than someone struggling on your own. But whether it's you struggling or whether it's someone else, understand that the words that you use around illness matters. The words in which you describe your sickness, even the most of mundane of cliches, somehow create an ethos around that sickness that send a message to those who are sick. So pay attention to the words that you use, because as you do, you'll find that the more mindful you are with what comes out of your mouth, the more useful it will be to that person standing before you. Shabbat Shalom. We're going to turn now to page 282 as we move into Aleinu.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, l'tet gedula liotzer breshit, shelo asanu kigoye haratzot, ולא שמענו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא, ביום ההוא, יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו, ושמו, ושמו אחד.
Please be seated. Our thoughts turn to those who we've loved and who we've lost. We turn to page 294, and as I call the name of your loved one, I'll invite you to stand, remaining standing, to honor their memory. This Shabbat, we recall the following individuals: Jerome Applebaum, Morris Becker, Samuel Berger, Herman Brown, Zita Berger, Samuel Cohen, Gedalia Convisar, Fanchin Gattel, Joel Goldberg, Norman Golden, Martha Heumann, Molly Kaplan, Samuel Kosak, Milton Lee, June Lin, Abraham Malton Fort, Yetta Mandelkern, Albert Mandelkern, Benjamin Meyer, Sidney Noodleman, Bennett Owens, Lucille Pauley, Jan Penny, Zelig Rappaport, Charles Reisner, David Schechner, Fanny Shapiro, Helen Tucker, Rosalind Wagner, Deborah Weidenbaum, Morris Ween, Sarah Zeisel, and Jared Zimmerman. And those who are in their Shiva and Shloshim periods of mourning: Ronnie Harris, sister of Paul Epstein. In addition, I'll invite you to rise and share the name of your loved one if you're observing a yard site that might not have been on this list, or you are within your 1-year period of mourning. Max Renteria. We join together again, page 294, as we rise. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, b'yamad divrach yirtzeh v'yamlech malchuteh, v'chayei echon v'yom echon v'chayei t'chol Beit Yisrael, b'agalah v'zman karib v'imru amen. Yehi shemei Rabbah mevarach le'olam omei amaya, yiparach v'yishtabach v'yipar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudesha b'rechu. Le'elam min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbachata menechamata, damiram bi'ama v'imru amen. Yehesh lama rabba min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mamav, huya aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Please be seated. So a few announcements, some upcoming events. The first is, of course, tomorrow morning, we have our Torah study at 8:30 a.m. We've got our Tot service, our Wake Up Shabbat at 9 a.m. And tomorrow we have our service here, Shabbat morning, as Blake becomes Bat Mitzvah. And we want to congratulate her and her family for that. And we're excited to share the Bima with you. In addition, we've got a lot of great events happening over the course of the next few days. Israel Independence Day is upon us, the 75th anniversary. And what we like to do in our community is we like to have kind of an intellectual thing and also just a cultural thing. That way, we can kind of, let's say, look at
a holistic approach.
Yes, look at
Israel.
both ways to appreciate Israel, from the head and from the heart. And so on Sunday, we are going to be gathering together here with the other congregations as we hear kind of we 3 rabbis of the congregations and Jeremy Ben-Ami, who's the founder of J Street, who's an Israeli advocacy organization. We have a conversation about where Israel is and where it's going. And then on Wednesday, and I'm especially excited for Wednesday, I really want to see you on Wednesday, we have an Israeli jazz musician. His name is Itamar Borachav. And he's going to be coming with his combo. And what he's going to be doing is he's going to be playing music and being in conversation with me, a little bit of both. And the whole idea is that he's going to reflect through music and through speaking with me on kind of how his Jewishness and his Israeliness and his jazzness, if jazzness is a word, all kind of mix together into one, and how they interplay with one another. And it's a way to just get a sense, by the way, time you walk away, you're gonna get a real sense of kind of like, what's the jazz scene look like in Tel Aviv? And why is it different than in New York City? How does it work? And then you'll hear some great jazz inspired by Jewish sounds.
whole
And
combo,
it'll be,
right?
It'll be great with
Yeah.
this combo.
Yeah.
On the 2nd of May, we're going to be hearing from, we tend to have a series that we've hosted over the years where we have important kind of elected officials and civic officials coming through our congregation. And so we've got another really important official coming through our congregation now. There is a civil rights division of the state. And so Sandeep Iyer, who is the kind of, I don't know his official title, but he's basically the civil rights guy for New Jersey, is coming to our congregation, and he's going to be in conversation with Amy Winkleman, who is our VP of Tikkun Olam, and talking about kind of what is the future of civil rights in New Jersey, what stuff is his office working on, and how can you get involved in making sure that this place is a great place for everyone who lives here. We've got other things happening over the course of the next number of months. Mark your calendar. You got an email today about it. We've got our run on the 4th of June. It's our annual 5K fundraiser. Hopefully you can make it. And in addition, if it didn't come out today, it's coming out any second, I think, the congregational meeting, which I'm going to check the date as I sit down for our closing song, but I think it's the 23rd of, thank you, the 23rd of May. And so as per bylaws, I'm going to be announcing that every single week up until the 23rd of May. So hopefully you can come, celebrate a wonderful year we've had, and learn a little bit more about what's to come, including our upcoming capital campaign, which is going to be launching pretty soon after we've done first a series of listening groups to find out kind of what is the vision for where we are going with this community. So with that, we end with Oseh Shalom, page 294.
What else? We need it now, we need it always. Beth and Bob Adelman, thank you. Dreamy. Oseh Shalom bimroma, hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Oseh Shalom bimroma, hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Oseh Shalom bimroma, hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. One more time. Oseh Shalom bimroma, hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Oseh Shalom bimroma, hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Oseh Shalom bimroma, hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Once more. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel. Amen.
Shabbat Shalom. Make sure to meet
Shabbat
someone new tonight.
Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.